Hello, this is Kathleen with the World Economic Federation. This week, as a continuation of our discussion of the media, we will be looking at the current attempts by the Democratic Party to create what they are referring to as a Joe Rogan of the left, and the absurdity of the very idea. The reason for the absurdity is that the Democrats who are saying that they need to spend millions of dollars to find out how to make one are the same establishment neoliberal Democrats that struggle to beat Trump in elections. The reason they struggle is the same reason that it is absurd. The reason can be summed up with one word: populism. Joe Rogan is a populist. He always has been. When Bernie Sanders was in the ascendancy in the Democratic primary, he was a Bernie supporter, as it resonated with his ideology and that of his viewership. In 2016 and 2020, the Democratic Party broke its own rules, or engineered things behind the scenes, to undermine Bernie's campaign, which ceded populism completely to the right wing as the only populists on the scene. The party did that because Bernie's democratic socialism, based on the idea of resurrecting New Deal populism and harnessing the power of it to the Democratic Party, was a direct threat to the democratic corporate neoliberal establishment. In 1933, in response to the New Deal, business leaders attempted a coup of the government and its constitutional order in what is referred to today as the business plot of 1933. That attempted coup has many parallels to the oligarchy's attempt to engineer an overthrow of the constitutional order on January 6, 2020, in response to Biden's win, likely out of fear of potential accountability for criminality during the first Trump administration, but also of Biden's later unfulfilled progressive campaign promises. Instead, once Biden came into office, he made a half-hearted effort to keep some promises and did nothing about addressing the lawlessness of the oligarchy during the previous administration, in close parallel to the Obama administration in 2008. If you look at the economic policies of the Democratic Party establishment, they are the same as Republican economic beliefs, neoliberal to the core, separated only by degree, what is known as the neoliberal consensus. Bernie's policies more closely resembled the New Deal Keynesian economics that were dominant before. Rather than a riot in the Capitol, the Democratic Party implemented a much more silent coup within its own primaries to prevent a social democratic model closer to the New Deal within the party, before it became established on the national stage as a party institution. Reagan, after all, was neoliberal. Thatcher was neoliberal. These two people were lionized by the respective conservative parties in their nations of origin. The reason that the Democratic Party cannot have Joe Rogan is because that role is already taken, as Joe Rogan is now a right-wing populist. Joe Rogan is what happens when you put populism and neoliberalism together into an ideology. In order to have a Democratic Joe Rogan, they would have to have either a Democratic socialist populist or a federation populist platform to work with, because, while he makes absurd and ignorant claims, Joe Rogan, unlike our Democratic leaders, is actually quite good at his job as a populist interviewer and podcast host. If the Democrats ever did try to sanitize Joe Rogan down to their beliefs, the only thing they could remove is his core of populism, since they refuse to change their platform. Any change to their platform would be a threat to their donor class, just like any action against climate change would be. If they are not willing to change their platform to address the climate crisis, which is an existential threat to human civilization, because it would betray the donor class, it is hard to imagine them changing their platform to make a democratic populist influencer to help them win elections. They are more interested in creating the appearance of one while changing nothing about their platform. If you take neoliberalism and take away populism, you simply go from Joe Rogan to Bill Maher, who also already exists as well. And if being smarmy and condescending while economically ignorant worked, the Democratic establishment would win more and would not have to manipulate their primaries to prevent a populist takeover of the party. The most likely candidate to be a Joe Rogan of the left would probably be someone like Kyle Kulinski, who throws stones at the Democratic establishment, which would lead to a platform shift that reflects the will of the Democratic base, not the elite. That is, after all, what happened in the Republican Party. Under Trump's populism, the party was swallowed by its conservative, Christian nationalist base. If the same was to happen to the Democratic Party, the very people wanting to spend millions on consultants rather than accept the reality that their economic platform has failed and left 60% of their population in functional poverty and needs change, would be out of a job as defenders of the neoliberal order. Of course, they would rather spend millions of donor dollars to keep working for the oligarchs rather than reveal the fact that the only difference between them and the Republican Party at this point is populism, as everything else is up for triangulation to serve the donor class. This is further reinforced by the fact that there are establishment Dems calling for a war on woke to try to embrace right-wing populism rather than change their platform. But few in the Democratic base are going to enthusiastically embrace Diet MAGA, as it declares its willingness to embrace Elon Musk after his spat with Trump, rather than serve the working class. This goes to show that any attempt to make a Democratic Joe Rogan under the current platform is a waste of time, money, and effort. If the Democratic Party would like to support meaningful climate action, we will gladly accept half of whatever they can save by not pursuing this pointless, performative folly. They only need to reach out. In the meantime, they need to accept that they are a failed economic ideology that serves the billionaire class, serving only as Wall Street and Silicon Valley's controlled opposition, and they should not expect to be treated as anything other than that at the ballot box and in the media. Are there any other reasons you could think of that would make it difficult for the Democratic establishment to create a Joe Rogan? Can you imagine a non-populist way it could be done that does not coming out looking like Bill Maher? If you would like the Democratic Party to not waste more of your money losing elections while paying consultants millions, please like, share, comment, and subscribe so we can accomplish meaningful change in addressing the climate, poverty, and housing crisis that neoliberalism created.